Can you make matcha in a teapot? This is something I tried recently and I was actually really surprised by the results. In this video, we're going to show you how to make matcha in a teapot and how it compares to a normal bowl of matcha. So first, we're going to find a teapot. For this experiment, I'll be using a clay kyusu teapot, which is the best teapot for Japanese green teas. Normally, I would use this teapot for teas like sencha, gyokuro, and hojicha, but today we'll be preparing matcha. The reason this teapot is perfect for tea is because it allows the leaves more space to expand and release their flavor into the water. If you were to use a tea strainer, the leaves would be packed against the sides and the tightly rolled leaves wouldn't be able to fully expand. Another benefit of the kyusu teapot is that it has this hollow side handle that stays cool to the touch even when you're brewing hot tea. This side handle allows you to pour the tea with more refined movements. All it takes is just a simple turn of the wrist to pour the tea. Finally, the teapots have a built-in strainer that filters out the leaves as you pour, so they don't end up in your cup. Some teapots have a smooth glazed finish, and others have a rougher unglazed finish. On the unglazed teapots, the clay itself can interact with the tea and improve its flavor, reducing the bitterness and accentuating some of the tasting notes. It's even possible to season a teapot like a skillet. Prepare the same tea over and over again, and the teapot develops a patina that strengthens each brew. A glazed teapot, on the other hand, is great for beginners because it's more neutral. This allows you to brew multiple types of tea in the same teapot without it impacting the flavor. If you're only going to use one teapot, you should go for a glazed one. What we're going to be looking for here is a teapot with a wide opening. This will give us more space to whisk the matcha. So out of these teapots, this one seems to have the widest opening, so let's try it out. By the way, this is a great starter teapot, handmade from tokoname clay, and you can find it on our website, neoteas.com. So what we're going to do here is add in 1 teaspoon of matcha, and actually, we don't even need to sift it. You'll see why later on in the video. Next, you can add in 1/3 cup of warm water. The best temperature for matcha is in between 140 and 175 degrees Fahrenheit, or 60 to 80 degrees Celsius. If you use water that's too hot, it'll make the flavor bitter, but if the water's too cold, it'll be harder to mix. So now we'll start to whisk the matcha. For this, you have to use the bamboo whisk. A metal whisk will damage your clay teapot and it will be harder to maneuver. This bamboo whisk has been used in the Japanese tea ceremony for hundreds of years, and it still is the best tool for whisking up delicious bowls of matcha, or in this case, delicious pots of matcha. You can see I'm a little bit more constrained on space here. The benefit of using a bowl is that you have more space for these whisking motions. Ideally, you want to whisk the matcha in zigzag motions using your wrist to agitate the matcha particles and fold them into the water. This is the one downside of making matcha in a teapot, but as you'll see later, it actually works pretty well. So once you get a little foam on your matcha, it's time to pour it out. What surprised me about this technique is actually a lot of foam comes out through the teapot. Also, the spout of the teapot makes it way easier to pour the matcha into a cup. If you were to serve this matcha to multiple people, it would be much easier and cleaner than with a bowl. While the foam makes it through the filter, the clumps stay inside the teapot. This makes preparation easier because one of the hardest parts about making matcha is dealing with the clumps. Also, the flavor is just as rich and smooth as matcha made in a bowl. You get slightly less foam because not all of it makes it through the filter, but enough to create a good texture in your matcha. So will I be using a teapot to prepare matcha from now on? Probably not. I really like the process of preparing matcha in a bowl. It's a ritual that engages all of your senses. The smell of the matcha being combined into water, the sound of the whisk gently scraping the sides of the bowl, the sight of the first bubbles appearing, the feeling of the warm clay bowl, and of course, the flavor of the freshly whisked matcha. I don't want to rush through this process too much when I make matcha, but at the same time, I think this teapot trick can really save you some time and give you a delicious cup of matcha. If you have a teapot but not a matcha bowl at home, maybe give this a try and see what you think. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have any questions about green tea, please feel free to leave them in the comments below. Until then, we'll see you next time.